welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. My name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. Today is Thursday, December 8th, 2022, and this is episode number 481 of a show where we're changing, a show where a lot is going on, and a show where I'm having difficulty removing the background because we are also live streaming and creating a video. Welcome back, guys. Like I said, this show's changing. There's a lot going on, and the topic of today's show is content creation, and we're just going to get right into it. You know, I'm experimenting with some new things on StreamYard here. I did some messing around here in an attempt to, bring back the background music. There's still some tweaking, some things I've got to do with regard to integrating it into StreamYard, should I choose to move in that direction. But I guess with that said, we might as well go ahead and mention show sponsors at this point. We are streaming via StreamYard on account of Food Forest Farms. Many thanks to Food Forest Farms, which is a specialty coffee roaster, cool hip camp, and Airbnb. And many thanks for them for supporting the show and doing what we do. And in this case, bringing it to new platforms, which factors into the topic of today's show, content creation. Would also like to mention York Meadow Farm as a sponsor of the show for facilitating the environment in which much of this takes place. You can check out what is going on at York Meadow Farm at yorkmeadowfarm.com. Lacto-fermented foods, bath and body products, all of which are available to you at a 25% discount by using the discount code AllAroundGrowth at checkout. Now, as far as content creation is concerned, I don't have a whole lot of show notes prepared for today. I don't have much, because the reality is the nature of the show changed. This was originally going to be an episode about goals and the podcast, but we're going to talk about content in general. This episode is geared toward those of you who create content of any kind. But while I'm largely going to speak about podcasting in today's show, the things that I mentioned to take into consideration are applicable for any and all content creation platforms. Okay, so why this in today's show? That's a good question, because previously I'd thought about goals. We'd talked about goals, and I talk a lot about goals in the show, like a lot, to the point where it's kind of annoying for some people to listen to, I guess. Some people aren't as into goals and motivation as I am, and that's cool. So, I guess they don't listen to the show. I don't know. But as I sat down the other day, because, one thing that's going on right now is I'm going through the goal setting workbook, hard copy. As you can see, though, I've got 2023 1.0, and I was working on the finalization of that as we move forward through the month of December. But it dawned on me that despite all of this in these 7 areas of life, all of these goals, that are being set in these 7 areas of life, I really have not done much with regard to goal setting in terms of the podcast, right? And, there's been a lot of change in this show from when it initially started. What I wanted to do, to make this show a good show was to go back. And for those of you guys who are new listeners who haven't had the opportunity to go back and listen to all 480 some whatever past episodes, God help you if you do. But for those of you who are new, the show's changed. It initially began as, and one of the things I was doing was trying to look this up, and then I thought, oh, to hell with it, we're just going to record. But I had a bunch of taglines, things going into the show. Welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. This is a show that provides insight and tools to build the life and homestead of your dreams. And I realized that, all these little intro taglines, like, that wasn't me, like, let's be frank, guys. Who am I to talk about building the life and homestead of your dreams, right? It's not like I'm some professional homesteader. You've got your own favorite content creator. And there's reasons why they're your favorite content creator, right? And in this world, in 2022, it's in the age of social media. It's easy for everyone and anyone to be a content creator. It's easy for everyone to be an artist. And I realize this, and I understand this, and I'm one of the masses that have taken advantage of this and capitalized on it as I sit here and record a show that started as a podcast that's now streaming on YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and a number of other platforms when it's like that. And more often than not, we're just streaming for the sake of streaming. Officially, we stream every Friday, but I digress. I've lost my point. And my point was that I rarely set goals for the show. And I was going to discuss, how it's changed and the nature of the change. But, for those of you who are interested, just go back to like episode, the first 7 episodes were dramatically different than everything that's going on now. And there's been a lot of ebbs and flows and how the show's changed over the years. And I finally, like I said, it's December 6th or 8th today. And I finally got to a point a couple of months ago where I decided to actually execute and take action on the podcast because I recognized this behavior, if you will, with regard to this show. I recognized the lack of focus, the lack of direction, how oftentimes scattered it seemed. And, I kind of put myself in the shoes of a listener and realized, like, what the hell is this show all about? Like, what is he like? What am I talking about? And, because I'd say I realized, like, for a long time it was building or providing insight and tools to build the life and homestead of your dreams, but that's not really what I was doing. The message of the show's objective was inconsistent with the actual message of the show. And when I finally, left my job in May, I decided that I would, spend a little bit more time on the show and use some, just do some things that I thought about, but never really actually executed on for a long, it took me a while to get to the point where I actually used a proper microphone. I did over 400 episodes with a simple lapel mic, either driving or simply walking around in here and talking. So how did this, so how did I begin to find some direction with my content? How did I decide to take it in the direction where it currently is now? That's a good question. And again, like I said, this isn't specifically geared towards podcasters, but I'm going to share with you the experience that I had because, well, it's specific to podcasting, but I think what you're going to gain from this and the takeaway is going to be that it's applicable to blogging, it's applicable to podcasting, it's applicable to public speaking, it's applicable to whatever it is that you're doing. Most likely it's probably even applicable in your career or whatever capacity you choose to operate in life. And like I said, spent a lot of time working through this goal setting workbook, and just recently it dawned on me that I hadn't been really setting goals with the podcast. And even though I spend a considerable amount of time on the podcast, it wasn't until a couple months ago that I finally decided to take action. So what we're looking at here is the downloads and dollars workbooks, or the dollars and downloads workbook by the podcast talent coach. His name is Eric Johnson, and I will link to him in the show notes. But basically what Eric does and what he promotes is services as a podcast talent coach so that you can transform your information into entertainment and turn your podcast into powerful and profitable relationships. All right. There's a lot of people out there that are coaches. There's a lot of people out there that are, offering their services. I trust this guy because he's helped a lot of people and he's got a history in radio, like actual radio, the kind of thing that we would listen to when we drove around in our cars on the road. So he knows the industry, he knows the game, he knows the marketing, he knows what it's like to talk about metrics and engagement and monetization. And a lot of you guys may be thinking, well, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in sharing the message that I have. And that's how this started. I talked a lot in past episodes about simply, doing this show as a way to give back what was so freely given to me. And that's, in a sense, what happened. And this passion project started to take up more time and more time and more time. Because in the process of doing this, I was finding direction in my own life. Like I said, through this goal setting workbook by Dan Miller, which you guys can download in the show notes and the description for free. That led to eventual involvement with 48 Days community, where I learned about Eric Johnson. Okay. Now I'm not going to share the screen of what, you get when you work with him, but I'm going to share some key points and some key takeaways that you can take into consideration as you go through your own content creation process. Okay. But for those of you who are interested in what Eric does and his coaching, it depends. He's got a number of different little packages There are discounts for people who are involved in the 48 Days Eagles community, which I said is where I met him. I'll link to that in the show notes as well for people who've heard me talk about that before or are interested in learning more about that. But that's where I met him. And over the course of 4 weeks and 4 small group calls and some individual coaching sessions with him, this is how I started to think about the show, at least over the course of those 4 weeks. And then I kind of went back to, the way things were. October was hellacious in terms of how busy it was. I probably didn't time my involvement in this course properly because I did it, I committed, I showed up, and I got the information, but have not fully executed on the information in order to obtain the results that I was looking for from engaging in this in the first place. So anyways, let's get into some of the things that he encourages us to take into consideration as podcasters. And I'm going to encourage you to take into consideration as content creators, whether it's podcasting or whatever. All right. So first and foremost, if you're thinking about it, you're creating content and you're thinking about a podcast or thinking about anything, think about why you're doing it in the first place. All right. You want to think about what you're doing, why you're doing it. And that's critical. And if you're not entirely sure, then maybe reconsider what we're doing, because any kind of content creation, podcast, YouTube videos, it's a big time commitment. All right. And in the case of podcasting or whatever, oftentimes we have websites, or in my case, I don't even have a website for this show yet. I haven't done a whole lot to grow my engagement, which is what is the next step after determining our why. There's some information on how to, think about your audience, and ask questions like what are the demographics of your ideal listener? Who are you creating this content for? What type of person are they? Where do they live? Just all kinds of things that contribute to us as people. Are they heavy content consumers? Are they gamers? Are they homesteaders? Are they woodworkers? Who are the people that you're trying to reach? And, in my case, having gone through something like this, having gone through and even been aware of this podcast coaching course, it really would have helped me identify and find direction to a show that lacked a lot of it for a long time. And quite frankly, I'm surprised at the number of people who listen to the show on a regular basis, because this has been, all over the map at times. So, in addition to thinking about why you're doing what you're doing in the first place, who you're catering to, what your audience is, ultimately, we need to understand that all of this, the content we create, the podcasts that we do, the blogs that we write, the events that we attend, the markets that we go to, the interactions that we have on social media, literally everything that we do is about building and cultivating relationships. Think about that. It's when we understand our why and we feel as though we understand our purpose and our objective, we can engage in the activity that we're doing, the content that we're creating a little bit more effectively. We know who we're trying to reach. We know why we're doing it. And then in addition to just understanding that everything in life is about relationships, and this is one thing Eric focuses on a lot, and it made a lot of sense to me. And that's why I'm talking about this. He's got additional ways that you can drive engagement. And again, this is specific to his course is called Dollars and Downloads, but this is specific to podcasting. But there are other people that have similar courses, a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff out there for free, but I'm interested in learning and connecting from proven people, and communities that I trust. One of those communities is the TSP community, which I've been a part of for, I don't know, 10 years or more at this point. Like that's been a big part of my life. Jack's show, the people that I've met in conjunction with that community, and the 48 Days Eagles community is also becoming a big part of that show. I've met and connected with several people in the TSP community there. And I'll tell you what, that's pretty cool. When you connect with someone outside in a different community where you're trying to engage in all around growth, for lack of a better term, and you connect with other people there from a community that you're already involved with, man, that's pretty cool. That's very, very interesting. And, why I like the 48 Days Eagles community is because of the diversity of people who are engaging in whatever hustle that they have. And it's a bunch of people who have determined that what they want is to become the boss of their own life. People like me that felt stuck in the old job. People that feel like they have no control over their time or no chance to enjoy their families. And, full of people who previously thought that the idea of loving the work that you do seemed like a joke. But that's not the case with people in that community. I've found that everyone there helps people that are driven, smart, creative, people just like you, because those people are also driven, smart, creative, helpful, because they've been there and they've done that and they've got the t-shirt, and that's kind of what this community is all about. So in addition to learning to understand first and foremost your why of what you're doing, you got to understand who your audience is, who you're going to cater to, and then how to drive engagement with that. Ultimately, understanding your why will, maybe you don't have a product or service to sell, but if you're creating content and you're not doing it with the objective to sell a product or service, then it's important to understand how you're going to fund this project, because all of these types of content creation, blogs, video blogs, YouTube, any of this podcasting, it involves inputs of time, effort, energy, and oftentimes money. So what do you have to sell? And if you don't have anything to sell, why not? Maybe you don't want to talk about it in your show, and that's fine. But maybe you can make part of your content about what you're doing to engage in that hustle, to make the money, to make it all happen. I'd like to think sometimes that's what we do here. And I'd like to think that moving forward, we're going to talk a little bit more about all of that as well. There's reasons in here that Eric details out about why most podcasts don't make money. Another segment or module in here about ideas that you can use to make money and things that you can do to make money with a free podcast. I mean, yes, there are free podcasts out there, free podcast hosting platforms. You can get started and host a podcast on Buzzsprout for free. The only caveat is that the episodes only remain available for 90 days. And I've got half a mind to, I don't know. I'm even entertaining the idea of going back to the free model so that, and trying to lure people in with some sort of subscription model for past episodes. I don't know. I'm not really sure. At the end of the day, I've got this whole workbook to go through, which indeed I've gone through, and you can see, I've got notes and red ink and black ink and notes from our calls and things like that. And I think that as I revisit my goals for 2023, in this goal setting workbook, I think it's high time to include some goals about podcasting and, how this interfaces into the 7 different aspects of life: financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. While I'm not directly selling a product or service with this show at this time, I am promoting products and services that either sponsors of the show have and create and promote, or clients have and create and promote. And the reality is the whole farm here and everything that's going on, it's like it's a family business, but the way in which I engage in the family business is a dynamic where I am not employed by the family farm, but they are a client of mine, for lack of a better term. So I'm kind of a consultant, and it's making me, think about all of this and how that relates to the product and service that I have and sell. Well, I'm not sure. This is why I'm going to go through this, and this is why I'm sharing this with you, is because much of the work that's been done over the past 6 months of being self-employed hasn't been for myself or my business. I've spent a tremendous amount of time working for my customer, my family, and that's good. But we've got to think about sustainability in the long term and what we're doing in business and in our content creation and what we're doing, and ultimately why. The one positive thing, I've talked a lot about the inconsistencies with the show, how scattered we've been and things like that. But the one positive thing that we've got going for us is the consistency in which it takes place. And that's generally been on a daily basis. So I think that's something else to take into consideration, in addition to determining your why. thinking about your audience, who it is, how to engage them, how to drive that engagement, products or services that you have to offer. What are you selling? How are you going to make money? And how are you going to do this? How are you going to ask for the sale? Because no one wants to sound like a shilly, guy promoting all this stuff. And that's why I took ads off. I don't, I had some control over these advertisements and these mid-roll ads, but I felt like it just interrupted the whole flow of everything. And rather than just have advertisements, I wanted to promote things that I believe in. So that's why I talk about, what Food Forest Farms does, what York Meadow Farm does, what, the ways in which Buzzsprout has helped me, Instacart, 48 Days Eagles community. All of this is affiliate stuff that I talk about and link to. And that's one of the ways that I try to make money through some of the things that have benefited me. And indeed, we kind of harken back to tools and resources to help you build the life and homestead of your dreams. Life first, homestead second. So at that point, maybe I was on to something as well. But okay, like I said, first of all, we've got our why. Second of all, we've got our audience, understanding who the audience is and how to drive engagement. Third, we've got thinking about what we have to sell and how to make money doing what we're doing with regard to content creation. And then how to ask for the sale, the process, how to bring people in, all of that stuff, lead magnet ideas. And last but not least, we think about the future and where we want to be and where we want to go with the content that we're creating. So again, that brings us back to goals, a plan, and acting upon that plan in order to make it happen. So, all of this stemmed from the free goal setting guide that I've linked to in the show notes. Definitely encourage you to start there and think about where you're at. If you're not feeling balanced in life, but have a desire to create content, start there, set some goals, work towards that balance, and then work with someone out there who, let's just call them a professional or a mentor for some guidance and counsel on what it is that you want to do. Or if you just want to do something because it's a passion project, then go for it and do it. But if you want to do something and do it well, then consider working with people who are accustomed to doing that. And you can find a lot of those people in the 48 Days Eagles community, which I will link to in the show notes. And with that said, that about wraps it up for today's episode. I hope that this, somewhat discombobulated conversation with regard to content creation did indeed give you some things to consider, because I think that a lot of the way that Eric Johnson promotes his course and the things that he teaches in his podcast talent coaching courses is applicable to anything. But, so you can find people, if podcasting isn't your thing, but content creation and other capacities is, then consider, hooking up with the 48 Days Eagles community, which I've linked to in the show notes, because that may very well be the catalyst that you need to get you beyond the plateau that you're currently in or at. All right. So that's, like I said, that's it. And tomorrow is Friday. It's the end of the week. And we are going to talk about Twitter. So we're going to see what's trending on Twitter. We're going to look at that in a couple different ways too. We'll look at it through my personal account, and we'll look at it through the All Around Growth Twitter account and see how things differ. And we'll talk about it all. So, with that, guys, that is it for another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.
In a world of pain, what can I do? The needs are many and answers are few. People turn away and I wonder why. If I can help somebody, then I want to try. People may think that it's odd that I believe in friendship and love. And truth is always the best way to the world that may seem odd. I'm an odd fellow. I'm an odd fellow. Whoa, whoa. I'm an odd fellow. If we stand together, we'll never fall. We can make a difference and answer the call. You know the times are wasting every day, and we can help somebody along the way. People may think that it's odd that I believe in friendship and love. Truth is always the best way to the world that may seem odd. I'm an odd fellow. You're an odd fellow. We're all odd fellows. I'm an odd fellow.